And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Philippe Matthews Show After Hours. Thank you for tuning back in with us. Back with us is Emunah Y'srael. As you know, is the creator of Soulonomics 101, Soulonomics, I should say, 101, author of The Angry Black Woman Syndrome, Revisited, and the B Midbar Journal, which is a 12-step guide for examination and purification. She is a soul inspiration who, in memory of her darkness, finds honor in sharing the process of turning her pain into purpose and used it as a catalyst for change. Welcome back, Emunah.
All praise be to the Most High. Thank you for having me once again, Brother Philippe. It's good to be back.
Oh, absolutely. It's an honor to have you back. In this series that we're doing since the last time that you were on the show, we had the Orlando, what's called the Orlando massacre, the Orlando terrorist attack, many different words for it. And one of the conversations that you and I had offline was that, and I've had it subsequently with other people, that they're touting the Orlando, and we're not again taking anything away from the loss of life and the carnage and what has happened. But the media is using using language that says this is the most horrific domestic terrorist attack in U.S. history. And you know, anyone who knows about being melanated in this country, I don't know, that might be a few people, would hear that and say, well, that just can't be right. You know, what about the Black Holocaust? What about, you know, what happened in Oklahoma? What happened, you know, just with that, not even including the slavery narrative. Speak to us about the I guess you would call it whitewashing of our history, and or just complete and total utter denial of it.
Yeah, and you took me right to my point, Brother Philippe. You know, at the space that I am in, just in the studies and the conversation, a line from the Malcolm X movie comes to my mind, where Elijah Muhammad, he's speaking, I forget if he's speaking to Malcolm X or he's speaking to one, and he says, I am not surprised. I'm not surprised. It's not surprising. Once you look at the very core of the issue, like we keep talking about, once you get to looking at the inner workings of what we're dealing with, then we should no longer be surprised. If we're still surprised, it means we haven't gotten it yet. That's in my estimation.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the surprise me, because that means we still have an expectation, and we haven't, like you said, there's a level of denial on our behalf as well. We haven't come to terms with who's telling the story. And if that individual or that system hasn't come to terms with, hey, guess what? I'm not going to admit that I really did anything wrong. And so our expectation shouldn't be that, oh, now you're finally going to grow a conscience. Like I was telling you off air, we have to be responsible. We have to listen with an active ear to say, hey, this is what is being said, but what are you really saying? And that's when our emotional intelligence grows beyond the point of looking for the abuser to finally stop abusing you. Instead of you coming to terms to say, hey, I'm going to finally stop allowing myself to be abused. And so this, like I said, it translates into this conversation, because they're not telling us this to give us the history of all that has happened before, whether it be with the indigenous Native American Indians, like you said, the transatlantic slave trade. It's not in comparison to something that's going to implicate them. You know, the narrative is being told by what's going to implicate those who I want to implicate. So when you hear something, the worst in American history, like, that's not the totality of the statement. The worst in American history as it relates to what? As it relates to who? Who is the victim? Who is the oppressor? You understand what I'm saying? For me, that whole line right there deserves more attention, because it needs to be interrogated a little bit more.
I was over the Father's Day weekend. I was with civil rights leader Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley and also Reverend Dr. Amos Brown, who was on the Freedom Bus, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
And Dr. Brown is the president of the NAACP chapter in San Francisco, and we were celebrating his 40th year in ministry with Third Baptist Church. And Dr. Durley, who marched with King, was pretty profound, and he said something that I think we need to hear but didn't want to hear, and that was, he says, white folk are not going to change.
Oh, okay.
And I say that because it's like, well, as much in my heart as we want them to, as much in our heart as we hope them to, collectively, not, and it's hard to put a broad brush on all of them, all white people, but it's kind of hard, because you say, well, when you hear someone who literally for the last 50 years of their life has been a part of this movement that preceded us before we showed up, and they say, in 2016, white people are not going to change. We have to change.
Listen, that's where I'm at right about now, Brother
That
Philippe.
blew my mind, man. I just said, well, let me, I'm going to talk to Emunah about this and see what she has to say.
I'm saying the same thing. Same thing. Our expectations, like I said, again, I'll keep saying it with my domestic abuse analogy.
Yeah.
You cannot just hope and pray in your little closet that the abuser is going to stop abusing you. You have to take some kind of stock in your own personal safety, your growth, your edification, your life, your family, and you change. It's easier to wish someone else to change because you really don't have to do no work. And then if it goes wrong, I can say, see, you ain't do nothing. And if it goes right, you're like, hallelujah, finally you change. But for you to do it, now that's the work. And that's, as a collective, as a people, like I said, we're still in that space where you're still accepting your abuse and expecting something else. And it's kind of like the definition, like they say, of insanity. We keep doing it over and over, and like, oh yeah, I just pray this time. You're just gonna acknowledge me. You're gonna see me. You're gonna recognize me, and you're gonna say you sorry. Not. I'm sorry, you guys. I just came off vacation after the whole roots thing, Brother Philippe. No, so I look real meditated, real easy right now. I'm just literally today. I just came back, so
oh gosh,
I'm vibing right now. But yeah,
okay. Well, you in rare form, and it's fantastic.
I'm in rare form right now.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. The conversation also leads me to the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy and post-traumatic slave syndrome, and that is these events, using the analogy that you use as an abuser, is fantastic because it's about the re-injury.
Right.
We keep getting re-injured and then getting blamed for the injury, and then being told to silence our pain by not yelling and screaming and protest that it hurts. That being said, the verdict came out today that the police officer who drove the van that carried Freddie Gray, who was indicted, for implicated and responsible for the death of Freddie Gray, was found not guilty today. That's just that re-injury. And they did a poll where over 65% of Baltimoreans, I don't know if that was white or black or just overall, believed that nothing was going to change. They thought the police was going to get away with it, and it's this constant. So it's like you got Orlando with the whitewashing of and the denial of the Black Holocaust, Wall Street, and then you got the re-injury, the post-traumatic slave syndrome re-injury of the Freddie Gray trial. how do we fit in the narrative of the collective? In other words, do we live in this, do we as melanated people, should we live not really caring about what happens to other people until what happens to us is addressed? How do we have a happy coexistence and medium without losing our story, without losing our agenda, because we get caught up in everybody else's narrative?
Right. That's a deep question.
I only give it to you because you're the only person on the planet can answer it.
As you were speaking, what comes to my mind is this. I did something a few years ago, and I said the cure is in the cause, right? And so for me, we need to take a look at honest look, because there's some people who because we're at this point, we don't again want to change, or we don't want to be honest. Honestly, what other people have arrived in this country or in this Western hemisphere in the way in which we've done? That fact, that reality has never gone away. If we as a people do not address that and then say, hey, I want to coexist with you peacefully. So we're trying to do something, that's like, again, back to the abuser. We're trying to, you got all of this stuff that happened to you, but now you want to coexist in the abusive environment. This is problematic. So when we look at all the movements, all of our leaders that came before us in their own way tried to address this. Some said, hey, man, we can't do it. Let's go. You got Marcus, you got Martin, and then some said, hey, man, if we just do what they say, and they're like, that ain't work either. So it behooves us that this last 150 years that just passed, to really scrutinize all of the thoughts that came. You have Booker T. Washington, you have Frederick Douglass, you had all of these thoughts, but I think they were all pieces of a puzzle, because they show us what happened when we tried. They show us what happened when we didn't. And in order for us to really move forward, honestly, we have to be, stop wishing and hoping and praying that someone who didn't like you from the jump is all of a sudden going to like you. And if you keep trying to push yourself in places that you don't belong, then expect for it to continue to be a hostile environment. And one of our major issues is that we do not have a place of our own. And those who occupy the land are of the thought process more often than not that you don't belong here, because the reason I brought you here, you no longer fit that description. So we have to, for me, it's like we have to be honest about what we're trying to do before we can get into whether or not. So as you said, when we're looking, we're getting distracted into everyone else's struggle because we're identifying with it and everyone else's plight, but everyone else is getting some kind of resolve or some kind of, attention on their issue. Everyone else, except for you and me. And those who, so that makes you go, like, wait a minute now. Everybody, you know what? I'm sorry I did this to you. Here's some reparations. You know what? I'm sorry, we did this to you for so many years. Here's a little bit of whatever. You people, go to the back. And this is the re-injury that you're talking about and Dr. Joy Degree talking about. But the question is, how did we arrive? Because that still plays a part, a large part of the treatment that our people continue to get in this Western. It's America, is throughout the Caribbean, it plays a large part. And again, for those who don't want to look at slavery, don't want to look at the transatlantic slave trade, this is why we keep going around the mulberry bush, and not getting anywhere, because we're willing ourselves into spaces that the ruling majority don't want you to be in. What do we want, Brother Philippe? We say we want community, but are we willing to do what it takes? Are you still trying to drink their colder ice? Like you have to come to a consensus before you can say how we're going to get there. You first have to say, well, what do you want?
So we have to make that determinant.
You have to determine, like, I want to go to the Keys. Okay, now how are we going to get there? But you can't have somebody saying, I want to go to Atlanta, I want to go to, New York, and you're not going to get there. You're never going to get there because you're not even trying to get to the same place.
What advice do you give to people wanting to, or is it something that we just do individually until it can become collective, to hold on to our story. I mean, you know, we know that police brutality is going on right now as we speak. We know that there are Black men and Black women being killed in the streets right now as we speak. But because we're in a political climate, because we have this massacre in Orlando, none of that media of our story is getting told and getting shown. Should we become our own media? Should we? What should we do to keep our narrative going?
And you know,
and our story going?
The reality is that we are. There was a sister who does a lot of work in the community, and something happened to her daughter recently, and she was the child was jumped by, I forgot how many European children, and she became her own media. And I shared it, and she said Facebook pulled it down. It got shared over 6,000 times, if I'm not mistaken. And so basically, this is because, again, this is what you have to do. The reality is, on things like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, you are actually getting more hits than those who are actually sitting before the television. You can reach people. There are people who have YouTube channels with millions of subscribers. There's some of our own people who are able and have that reach. So what we have to do is begin to support one another. Like, come on to like Philippe Matthews' show. You know what I'm saying? Like checking out Emunah, who's also on YouTube. Like checking out other channels and helping to build and collaborate with one another. So that we can have that broader reach. So that, because again, that's now you taking into your own hands. What can I do? If you see somebody's information come across that can be beneficial, both good and bad, because we seem to like to share the bad, but not share the good. And so when you see something good that's actually edifying and actually going against that narrative that everything is bad, share that too. You know, and this is what we have to do, because gone are the days that you have to wait on somebody to see your story and see value in your story. You can bring it forward, and those who are around you can help to get it out there. And so definitely, yes, become your media.
Speaking of which, you wrote a book with your child.
Yes.
We're talking about this narrative of being collective. Let's start also in the home.
Yes.
And that's what you did. You always live by example. Tell us about this book that you wrote with your. Well, how was it a 10-year-old?
She's seven.
She's 7.
8 now. Yes. As a matter of fact, and I have to big up Dr. Boyce Watkins and Dr. Tyra Selden, because they wrote an article. I shared it. Big up to Philippe Matthews as well for having me on as well and talking about this stuff. And this weekend, actually this coming Sunday, we're going to be having a children's workshop here in Florida, where we're going to have community children come, and we're going to have the same conversation to parents and children as to what they can do to start right where they are. Give me 1 second, please. Those are the children getting loud.
I love that every show, man. I was hoping that I was gonna get some Mama Emunah, you know, because Mama Emunah is just, I just love it, because it reminds me of back in the day when I was a shorty, and my mom would be on the phone, because it didn't have internet. It was the phone then, you know. My mom was on the phone. I'd be acting up, throwing stuff on, absolutely crazy, and my mom would just put her hand over the phone like that. And boy, I will.
That's before we have mute.
I will stab you with a cigarette. I swear to God, I will kill you. And then come back. Hi, everyone. How are you, darling? You know, just like nothing ever happened. You know.
Yeah, I just asked them to pipe down just a little bit. They're getting a little excited, but we did write. This is the book here. My Brother, My Keeper. It's available on Amazon as well as my website, EmunahY'srael.com, where you can distribute it as well. So not only are we writing it and helping people to write it, their own narrative. If you want to make some money distributing a narrative, hey, you could do that too. So this is the book here, My Brother, My Keeper. It's a very interesting tale. Actually, my mother-in-law just called me this week, and she ordered some, and she was like, I didn't put it down. I wanted to know what happened next. So she read it. And again, it's a chapter book for children, but adults are intrigued by it as well, always wanting to know what's going to come next. And I wrote it with my daughter. We actually sat down together, pen and paper, and talk about what we desire to see. Because we have to understand that we can create our reality. And it's not, you don't have to be delusional. You know, you sit down and you read stuff like Harry Potter or this, you know, all of these books, that came out of somebody's mind. You know, and so if we begin to move from the complain we don't have to the do, and now we have, when we move from that space to this space, then now we can begin to have a different conversation. And so that's what I wanted to do for my daughter, and as well as my children, my younger ones, because they walk around saying, my brother, my keeper. That's the name of the book. And
Nice.
so when we do it in front of the children and we let them see the process, then we no longer just have to harp on everything that's wrong in the world. You understand? And so we have to lead by example in our spaces. And now we're going to go out in the community, and I'll let you guys know how that goes and share with the community children of what can you do? Put down your iPad, put down your cell phone, sit down with your parents and write a story together. You know, and so definitely check that out. My brother, my keeper. Let me know what you think.
Will do. Closing thoughts on moving forward in keeping our narrative alive.
That's what I say, right? First of all, moving forward, you know I'm gonna come back to it now, Brother Philippe. Literacy, melanated literacy. Today I was just writing because I have to go print it up, what I wanted to talk to the children about in addition to it. And the thing is this, reading helps expand your imagination, but writing helps express it. So if you have reading without a way to express now what you are feeling, it's not complete. So how do we write our narrative? How do we keep our narrative alive? You speak it. You change the parts that you no longer want to be that by changing your behavior and your behavior. So you can say, I used to be this, but now I'm that. Why? Because you made that conscious decision to change your narrative. Write it down, involve others. When I tell the children, I tell my children, I make it a habit of telling them their birth story. And it's the funniest thing to hear them walk around telling each other. So when I was born, or when I was in my mommy's belly, they're now telling their own story so that they can have something to hold on to. You know, and you make it something that you repeated. This is something that our foreparents used to do. They used to repeat the stories that you wanted people to remember. But if you never talk about yourself, you're not comfortable with your past, you haven't resolved or worked through it, what you're doing is actually you're setting yourself and your children and your family up, because somebody's going to come behind you and make that same mistake. Because
or worse yet, somebody else is going to give you a story, and it'll be the false story because you don't have a story of your own. So you're going to end up living somebody else's story. And then then you're gonna be like, who was that person? They're like, oh, I remember this person. I'm like, that wasn't such and such. And like you said, somebody's gonna make up a false narrative. And just think about all of the people who we know. What if they never, and that's what I was gonna ask the children, what if they never wrote it down? Or what if they never spoke it? Or what if they never shared it? And that life is lost without knowing the value of why that life was here to begin with. So how do you keep your narrative alive? First, you have to find value in it. That means you would have to find value in your experience, even if it's bad. All the parts of your experience, find value for yourself and then share it. Fantastic. Emunah, how can people get in contact with you? What is your best way of communication?
You can hit me up on all social media, Emunah Y'srael. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, Emunah Y'srael. Soulonomics, do-it-yourself soul improvement expert. And I know we might have to get into that, Brother Philippe, because every time you say it, I see you smile, and people might be wondering, what is that? And that is exactly what I'm talking about right now. Soul improvement. They have self-improvement, but soul improvement is the same as self-improvement. It's just being aware that the self is you, the soul, the true you. And so we replace that word so it doesn't just sound like this off to the side type of person. It's you. It's that immaterial part of you, and you need to pay more attention to your soul, and give it the things that it needs to grow and purge and renew itself. And so www.emunahyisrael.com.
Fantastic. And spell Y'srael for people.
YSR. That's the New York in me. I can't say R.
I heard that.
Down south people say Ara, but it's RR. It's really YSRAEL. So EmunahY'srael.com.
Oh, I love it. Stick around with me in the green room, Emunah,
Thanks
as
for
we
having me.
sign off. Great conversation, a necessary conversation. We'll see you guys next time on the Philippe
Yes.
Matthews Show after hours. Thanks again, Emunah.